We're here on Thursday, April 30th to talk a bit about what's in the news, what's been on our minds. And spoiler, we're going to be talking about the nasty campaign that's been going on for the last couple of days by Team PCP called Mini Shai-hulud. So let's start off quickly with a little lightning round of news. So first of all, in the last couple of weeks, there were some major security incidents with Vercel and Lovable. And we'll say we're fans of those platforms. We know people at those companies. You know, we're not here to throw rocks, but at the same time, we don't necessarily feel like the security announcements went the way that we would want to see them. So Paul, why don't you kind of start and share your thoughts a little?
Yeah, I think that you kind of summed it up well there. The while we're fans of those platforms and we use some of these platforms, I think one of the things that we saw, with both the Lovable and the Vercel announcements were, an initial kind of defensive kind of way of responding to it. Like, no, there's nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. Move on, folks.
And then with both cases, so the Lovable thing wasn't technically like a breach per se. I mean, basically what they did is they regressed something they had fixed in early February, and something that had fixed earlier. It accidentally got regressed. They didn't catch that, and then it opened up this ability for people with free accounts to be able to see both the source code and the chat history for anybody on the platform. I mean, that's a pretty huge, glaring problem. And for Lovable's kind of their combativeness and their hubris in their tweets and their responses just did not sit well with me. And even in the last tweet, which I posted on LinkedIn, they said, let's be clear, this is not a data breach. Oh, you're being kind of wishy-washy with your words there, this is like the mother of all IDORs, right? Where you can basically see the source code, the core intellectual property, and the chat history where you're dropping API keys. And then you layer on top of that what you and I are going to be talking about next week or whenever we can release that research, where Lovable and many of these AI platforms are encouraging, people using them to drop API keys and credentials into the Lovable chat. Now you have a problem where the chats are anybody in the world can see them, and you've been dropping all these things in there because even if you tell it not to, it still prompts you to do these things. So you do it, and then you're kind of screwed. And for Vercel, the biggest issue that I had as a Vercel customer is they did not produce any actionable mitigation steps. None. Zero. So I had to basically write a document, which is on the OpenSourceMalware GitHub repo, which has been very popular. And I had people inside of Vercel reaching out to me saying, thank you, for creating this. This is good. And that was really frustrating as a Vercel customer, a paying customer, and to not have remediation advice. That was frustrating.
Yeah. And I mean, that said, we've heard that there have been some culture changes since that incident. I'll go ahead and pop the incident response repo that you made into the chat. And meanwhile, let's move on to our next topic because we said lightning. So let's talk about the GitHub RCE that came out. Was it this week? A lot has happened this week.
Yeah. So basically, this is crazy. Like when I read this, I thought for sure this is this can't possibly be true. But basically what happened is that sitting inside of the code base, the GitHub code base, for over a decade, I actually don't know what year that was introduced. But anyhow, you could pass a -O option when you do a Git push. So this is the first part of this is a Git thing that then GitHub themselves, interpreted in poorly. So the first is a Git issue, right? And we all know that Git itself is not secure by design. Linus wrote it and didn't add authentication, yada yada to it. So the fact that we then are taking anything you pass with -O into GitHub and then execute. Basically, it's remote code execution. Basically, you can pass it anything, or you could, and it would run that. So that's like a huge. I can't believe that was it. No, horrible.
All right. And then third, maybe this is like the hot take of the week. We're seeing a trend where EDR is becoming the agent of coding, becoming the enemy of coding agents. And this is a little bit wild how we kind of came to this conclusion. It was through a personal experience. I think you and I might have actually been chatting when it happened, but you said, oh no, just got a pop up from our EDR. We won't say who it is. That you've been compromised, and you looked into it, and it turned out, thank goodness, not compromised. False alarm. But this connects to behaviors that EDRs look for that in the past perhaps would have been legitimate signals that something malicious was happening, but in the age of AI is not a signal. And what was that? It was changes happening not at the speed of human action. So Paul, maybe talk just like another minute about what happened and why you think EDR is having an issue here.
Yeah, and I want to expand on this in future episodes, but basically what it comes down to, you said it pretty succinctly there, that I was working with Claude, refactoring a library. I was editing files myself manually in Vim, and Claude was editing some of these files too as well. And this wasn't malware. Like I'm not doing malware analysis on my laptop. This was a library that we're writing as part of the open source malware platform. And that library has to do with deobfuscating code, deobfuscating, not obfuscating. So basically what happened is the EDR that we won't mention put together these actions, like the fact that Claude was moving at non-human speed, which is what you said, well, which is making all these changes really quickly, renaming files and changing files, and which looks kind of like
what
ransomware.
It's supposed to do.
Yeah. Looks kind of like what happens, when you get wiped or when ransomware happens. Mm-hmm. But then there was also this obfuscation factor, because when we went and looked at the logs later on, pretty quickly, we saw that it was talking about obfuscated files, and we weren't obfuscating files in that code base. We were doing the opposite, but the EDR thought we were. And so you put all those things together, and it throws up this huge screen that says infected and quarantines the library that I'm working on, which thereby stops my ability to actually do it. So I think this is going to become a bigger issue, in the same way that Git and GitHub are not cut out for like the speed and scale of iterations for Git commits and being able to iterate on code. In the same way, EDR now, with agents running on your machine that move at agent speed, it doesn't look like a human, and yet they're built to detect things that are non-human.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, TLDR here, EDR needs better context so that typical AI behavior doesn't result in a false alarm, a false positive. Okay, let's talk about the thing that every defender, incident responder, researcher is dealing with. I'm going to read one of the messages we got today, and I don't know if you've seen this one, Paul, yet, but it absolutely it spoke to me. I've had the same thought. One of our friends said, "Pack up 2026. I'm going home." Truth. So yesterday morning, I want to say, is when Team PCP launched their latest attack. Team PCP is a threat actor group. They're not government affiliated. There's lots of different subgroups in it. So I'd say it's a loose coalition of people who historically were not very savvy, but definitely starting in March, with the Trivy and check marks and light LLM attacks, we've seen them mature. And we just observed another iteration of this week with their mini shai-hulud campaign. Their name, not ours, but it does have shai-hulud hallmarks. But they're also doing something really interesting with it, where they're borrowing a technique from the Pollen Writer campaign, which is a North Korean threat actor group, or it's North Korean threat actors is their campaign. So we've got thousands of compromised repositories at this point. I'll share the link so you can see it if you want. Most recently, The Lightning project was compromised. We saw, let's see here, there was another one that just came through. We're seeing this one not being a nothing burger. Paul, what were your thoughts when you first saw it?
Yeah, this is definitely not a nothing burger. I mean, there's last time I checked, which was last night, there's, like you said, 1,200 repos on GitHub. So basically, I'm jumping ahead, but one of the shai-hulud kind of components of this is when it compromises a developer or a CI environment, because it works in both. It basically does all the info stealing, wraps it up, compresses it, and then creates a net new repository in the compromised user's GitHub or organization's GitHub, and names it what is it? A mini shai-hulud has appeared. Yes. Which is why I made that art, which is like everybody is like loving. Like if you haven't,
I'll see if I could do a quick screen share because I am delighted. First of all, your AI skills with AI art are unparalleled, but also this one gave me
represent, homie. Yeah, while you're bringing that up,
that one apparently is your superpower, other than malware analysis.
Well, yeah, and being like a 1000x.
Yeah, here's our little little baby worm with the chicken. It's pretty cute. I like it.
shai-hulud has appeared. Yeah, so basically the Team PCP, the background of Team PCP is that they kind of made their mark doing cloud native info stealing and compromise. So they their background is in compromising cloud providers like AWS. So fast forward to February when they started this new campaign. They're not DPRK. They are not. Nobody thinks that they're actually the original shai-hulud threat actors. Instead, they are this crew that is kind of pivoted to focusing on GitHub Actions and compromising GitHub Actions in a number of ways, which is really kind of stretching GitHub. The inside baseball that I'm hearing is that we're going to see some really big changes coming from GitHub because GitHub Actions is just being stretched and pushed by threat actors like Team PCP so much. But so they compromise you initially in CI, but then they also have all these packages that they are pushing out, both NPM and PyPy. So Lightning is a package that's used, unfortunately, in a lot of AI kind of tech stacks. It's downloaded 15 million times a year. Sorry, 15 million times a week, not a year. Very popular. On the same day, the Intercom client NPM package, which is downloaded 370,000 times a week, was also compromised. And they compromised several other packages over the last couple of days as well. But what's unique about this new mini shai-hulud has appeared campaign is that they've taken, what OpenSourceMalware, we've done all this research, starting way back at the beginning of 2026 around DPRK, specifically DPRK, evolving the contagious interview campaigns to now be proactive. So they're, instead of waiting to social engineer people, they still do that, but instead of only doing that, they now proactively go and attack people or use existing compromise from people that have been earlier compromised in these kind of contagious interview fake recruiter things. They get persistence on their machines, on their developer laptop or in CI, and they do onward stuff, right? They add stuff to repos and whatnot, but they're using one kind of technique as the kind of core persistence and infection vector, which is VS Code tasks files. Now, this was something that only, the kind of tasks jacker and pollen rider campaigns were doing, that evolved out of contagious interview. So it's the same subgroups inside of the Lazarus group in DPRK, North Korea, excuse me. Now, Team PCP, who is not North Korean, is now using this technique because it's such an effective, persistence. So whoever, I said this last time, but I'm going to say it again, whoever at Microsoft thought it was a good idea to create a file that adds persistence every single time code is opened in the folder, because that's what they're doing, is they're using this parameter inside of VS Code tasks file to say anytime you open something inside this folder. So anytime you open any piece of source code in VS Code from that affected thing, it then compromises you. It's just beautiful, and that's why now you see so many threat actor groups moving to this singular threat vector.
Yeah, and last week we talked about lifecycle scripts in NPM. This is, for all intents and purposes, the exact same playbook. different ecosystem, but you download the file. You don't have to install it. These lifecycle scripts run automatically, and voila, they own your machine. I am screen sharing right now, so anyone who's listening on the podcast will have to pop over into YouTube or LinkedIn to see the visual if you want to. But this is a threat graph visualization of the Lightning compromise. So what we have here is we have our Lightning package and several indicators of compromise associated with it. This is the infrastructure used to deliver this malware. So we have 3 URLs, we have hashes, we have IP addresses. And it's interesting, one of these is connected to, I didn't count, what is that? Maybe 10 or 11 other packages, other plugins. So you can see with these types of campaigns, the breadth and the impact of them when, they're using infrastructure for multiple things.
Yeah, 100%. So, and as you can see there, they're affecting both PyPy packages and NPM, which we mentioned earlier. We're seeing this across, the kind of threat, landscape right now, where bad guys now, because they have access to agents like Claude and Codex, can take existing payloads that work in JavaScript and then make them work in Python or Rust. So, for example, we're seeing a lot of campaigns right now where bad guys are publishing Rust, especially targeting the crypto ecosystem, using Rust libraries, but also using NPM or Python libraries to attack, on different flanks. And so, yeah, in this case, to your point about lifecycle scripts, basically most of these NPM packages and also the Python packages in their own way, there's a lifecycle script that's added to it. It then runs a setup .js file automatically after you install the package, the NPM package. And that sets up a custom bun environment. And then it runs a second file, which in the latest iteration is router setup or something like that, .js. And that file is the huge, it's over 11 megabytes compressed and obfuscated JavaScript. And then that's where the payload is. And that payload is pretty gnarly. It's an info stealer, but it also adds persistence across all your Git repos, and it basically finds all these places where to put things in for cursor and VS Code. And so from that point on, once that runs, they now have persistence on your machine. And so this is how Team PCP and DPRK separately can maintain persistence on your developers' machines. And we need to be talking about this more, because we're seeing, I just got hit up by another researcher. Jen, you haven't heard this yet.
Oh no.
He's telling me that he's telling me that he's found an iteration in Pollen Rider. I have not verified this yet, but he's saying he's found an iteration on Pollen Rider that is hundreds of thousands of affected users rather than 2,500 that we have right now inside of our database. So I need to go and look into that. But this is a huge issue because they are maintaining persistence on these machines, on these developer machines, and then doing bad stuff and stealing credentials. And this is how this keeps growing and growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, the repositories that have been affected by mini shai-hulud are in the over 2,000 range at this point. Let's see here. I'm going to sort by
I didn't even look this morning.
most stars. That's not super helpful. Now I'm just playing here because I haven't done it. Most forks is probably a better way to look at it. Yeah, probably. Well, I guess these are the forked repos, not the original repos, but somebody starred a bunch of, let's see here, innocent first test. Could this be them? Yeah.
There's well, yeah, and then you're gonna have security research. You're gonna have security researchers also playing with this too as well. So
true.
There's all this kind of gray area that happens after these, where some subset of those Git repos are going to be either legitimate researchers like me trying to figure out how it works, but then also want to be bad guys taking the functionality and trying to create their own version of it. But yeah, it looks like there's around 2,000 or more than 2,000. And basically what those repos are, just to say it again, that's somebody that's been compromised and has taken all their data that is stolen, wraps it up, compresses it, encrypts it, and then stores it inside of this net new GitHub repo. So people need to be looking for these GitHub repos inside their personal GitHub environment and their organizations as well, the GitHub organizations.
Yeah, let's talk actions, because undoubtedly there's a lot of people affected by this, compromised by this. And if we can learn anything from what we saw last year with the original shai-hulud campaign, waves 1 and 2, is credentials that were leaked in these repositories, similar pattern again, lots of files pushed public. They were not getting rotated quickly enough, or at all, perhaps. And I'm not sure as an industry that we've learned from that. I realize, and I think a lot of security professionals will say, they don't necessarily have good insight into where credentials are living in their organization. If that's a problem for your organization, that's something that I would personally prioritize if this is a concern to you. These are not just targeting tech companies. The data that we saw last year is only a little over half of the shai-hulud 2.0 wave victims were tech companies. And it's not only targeting large organizations. Lots of small companies are going to be hit by this also. So, some things that you can be doing. I was actually chatting with the GitGuardian folks yesterday, and they shared a blog with me that was showing some research they did around using tools like Dependabot and RenovateBot to auto upgrade. And they had found that those tools were directly responsible, not the tools, but the configuration of the tools, were directly responsible for auto upgrading to malicious versions. So, look at your auto upgrade policies, pin your dependencies, enforce cooldown periods. I know that this is not like the most exciting stuff, but it works. It will go a long way toward making sure that you're not the next victim, that your repositories don't go public, and then figuring out how to get a better handle on your secrets location sprawl to be able to quickly rotate them, kill them off in these circumstances. Being able to respond quickly is so key. What else would you add, Paul, in the last, few minutes here?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of the focus in the industry historically has been on keeping that stuff out of CI, right? And yes, you want to run these credential scanners locally too as well. But I want to be very clear. Bad guys now, both Team PCP, DPRK, and others, are targeting the tools on your developer's laptop, and there's shit tons of credentials there. So in this particular case that we're talking about, this latest, these packages, both Python and JavaScript packages today that were compromised, they are finding Cursor and Claude and other tools specifically on your development laptops and going and compromising those and then stealing data out of those. And, the reality is that most people don't harden their Claude setup, right? So like, for example, Trail of Bits has created a really great, Dan Guido and his team at Trail of Bits has created this really great resource on GitHub, in the GitHub Trail of Bits organization, how to harden your Claude, basically creating files, Claude.md files and other files to protect credentials, just kind of generic types of credentials, and do other kind of hardening. How many people have done that? Probably very, very few, right? And so because of that, bad guys, compromise these machines, whether it's a Python package, an NPM package, AI skills, whatever, GitHub repos, whatever it is, and then they're immediately going to those places inside of, yeah, exactly. This is a great resource. People should be reading this and hardening their agents, but then also spending the time to think, what have I given my agents in the past, right? Like the Lovable keeps prompting people to say, give me your secret keys. And, one, they need to stop doing that, but you need to think about, how many times have I given Lovable or Claude my secret keys, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's in my conversation. Now those conversations are specifically being targeted by these bad guys to be exfilled and then used.
Well, I am going to end us on perhaps not a high note, but at least it made me smile a little bit. Hey, Tom, over on LinkedIn, when is it going to stop, Paul? I'm tired of this. Paul, when is it going to stop?
I wrote back. I said, I know, right? This week has been, this month has been crazy, but, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know when it stops. It doesn't. It's getting worse.
It doesn't. Well, hopefully we have better news to share next time, but we are at our time. So, hit us up in LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you can find us, and tell us what you want to learn about on these. We'll continue to talk about current events and trends. And, when things are not on fire, like they were this year, Freudian slip.
Freudian slip.
Yeah. We will talk about more generically what you can be doing, things you need to understand. I really want to talk about interpreted language malware and how it's different than compiled malware. So that's on my personal list to get to. So what do you want to hear about? No. See ya.
See you, everybody. Take care.